All right, so today I want to talk about a story that I think Candace Owens broke, but if not, she's one of the main people talking about it. And again, this tweet has, 69,000 retweets, 87,000 likes, so it went very viral. And it's in regards to Black Lives Matter, and I'll read it and talk a little bit about it. So she says, "While this video is really important and every person needs to watch and share it, Black Lives Matter donations go directly to a super PAC called Act Blue that has given hundreds of millions of dollars to Democrats running for president. How is this legal? BLM is literally a shell company." Now, again, I point this out to so many people, and I've never had anyone admit that they were wrong about it. And that I say Black Lives Matter is a political movement, it's about politics. And you have all these complete and utter idiots that just deny it. It is not about ending racism. I mean, even if it was, it's not going to fix the problems. Again, the problem with Black Lives Matter is that, and the people who support it, is that they have this belief that if we just ended racism, then it would completely eliminate all the pain and suffering of the black community. That's basically how the argument goes. And the problem is that it's not true. I mean, for starters, I mean, racism at the hands of police doesn't disproportionately affect blacks. Racism of the prison system doesn't disproportionately affect blacks. Again, I've talked about those numbers. Um, Police shootings, they're not more likely to shoot blacks. Um, Prisons, again, the argument goes, oh, blacks are 13% of the population, they're 25% of the prison population, therefore racism. Well, no, that's not true. Blacks commit about half the violent crime. So if anything, blacks are underrepresented in the prison system. And the other argument that they bring up is, oh well, blacks get more, harsher sentences, which I've never seen actual numbers of that. But the one thing to point out is that men get far more disproportionate sentences compared to women than the black white gap. I think that the men women gap is literally like 5 times the gap of the black white gap. So again, if you're going to be up in arms about that, then you better be up in arms about the men women gap. Again, like the majority of people that go to jail, or at least among blacks, are black men. I mean, they're men amongst any race. So again, if you really care so much, you'd think that the 5 times gap between men and women would be something that would be more in your minds. But again, the problem with bringing that up is you'd be viciously attacked as, oh, you're a sexist and all this garbage. So again, they have no credibility whatsoever, and they're just flat out wrong about everything they bring up. Like, they're just flat out wrong. The reason that they believe racism is this huge, massive issue is, one, kind of a misleading way of thinking about things, and number two, just a flat out lie. And that, number one, they think racism is this horrible issue because there was racism in the past, which isn't proof that there's racism nowadays. Again, I'll always throw out the caveat, and I'll always agree that there is racism to some degree. My argument has always been, and probably always will be, that racism accounts for a very small percentage of the pain and suffering of the black community. The vast majority of the pain and suffering of the black community comes from the remnants of the welfare state, the single motherhood, the the fact that men and boys who grow up in a single parent household, specifically single mother, much more likely to end up in jail regardless of race. And blacks are the most likely race to have single mothers. So again, that's probably one of the main reasons why blacks disproportionately end up in jail, at least as a percentage of population. They're not actually disproportionately in jail. It just appears like they are. They're not graduating from high school. And the other problem too is that the girls of single mothers much more likely to become single mothers. So again, the problem is that it's a spiraling death circle, and that the problem just continues to get worse because you have a single mom with that has two, three, four kids. Well, those kids are that much more likely to end up in the same position that she is, or in jail if you're the guy. So that is the problem, that if you really want to fix the pain and suffering of the black community, fixing the welfare state, or at least flat out ending it, would be one of the first things you would bring up. The other problems too is that black girls are much more likely than comparable to whites to report being sexually abused by black men. So again, if you're really worried about this kind of stuff, that should be something you would bring up. The big problem with all this kind of stuff is that that would require people to take some responsibility. And that's not something people want to do nowadays. They want to blame other people. They want to pretend that the um, police shootings are like 0.1% of blacks killed every year, but they want to pretend that if we just ended police shootings, all our pain and suffering would go away. No, it wouldn't. Another problem too is that most of them are justified. Like you look at the guy in Atlanta. Again, you attack a cop, you're drunk, you attack a cop, you steal his taser, try and shoot him with it. Yeah, you deserve to be shot. Again, if you don't want to do that, don't do that. Again, not to mention he was resisting arrest. You look at the hands up, don't shoot myth. You look at the Trayvon, all those ones. Again, completely and utterly justified. Now, if do you want to say, oh, you could have handled the situation differently? Yeah, but it's according to the letter of the law, those were justified. Now, again, George Floyd, not justified. I mean, both sides could have easily done things to have avoided the altercation. I mean, George Floyd, career criminal, um, high on, I think, fentanyl. He had been he'd used cocaine before, meth, like all these drugs, all the drugs under the world. Pretty long rap sheet, resisted arrest. Again, that's the problem too. That what these people don't point out is that if you just, I mean, if you just don't break the law in the first place, and if you do, you don't resist arrest, you radically reduce your chances of being killed by the police. And the problem is that, again, people just don't want to admit this kind of stuff because it disproves their worldview. So again, just crazy stuff. Now again, I don't believe that of the cases that where police clearly are overstepping their bounds, absolutely they should be punished. But the problem is that we have the group of people that are pretending that police are just unjustified police shootings are just rampant. They're just this plague on society when the numbers really just don't bear that out. They just don't bear that out. So getting back to the main point here, Black Lives Matter, again, lost pretty much all credibility for the simple fact that they're clearly as much of a political movement than they are a anti-racism, pro-equality movement. And again, just lost all credibility for the simple fact that they're pretending that if we could just end racism, that all the pain and suffering in the black community would go away. And that's not true, and the numbers clearly don't bear that out. So again, um, very, very important video. Again, it's something I've been talking about for a while, and this is just more evidence that continues to prove that Black Lives Matter is not or a better way of putting it, they are a political organization that exclusively exists to protect the left. And again, these are the same people that the blacks have been voting, the overwhelming black areas and they're the people that have been voting Democrat for generations, and look at where it has them. Like, has poverty improved? Not really. I mean, the poverty numbers, from what I've seen, are pretty similar, since the welfare state and all these big government spending things have been implemented. So again, that I just wanted to make a video about this. And I guess the last thing to point out too is that it's not racism too. I pointed this out ad nauseum, but there may be someone that hasn't heard this before, and I'll just say it is definitively, or pretty much, like you say, you can definitively say that the pain and suffering of the black community today is not a result of racism. And for the simple reason that when you look at the divorce rates, when you look at the single motherhood rates, when you look at the graduating from high school, all this kind of stuff, the numbers of blacks or for blacks were much better, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. Now, you can't possibly argue that there's more racism today than there was back then because there was laws on the books that literally were racist, segregation, Jim Crow, stuff like that. So you can't possibly argue that there's more racism nowadays than there was back then. So the problem is that, okay, well, what has caused the pain and suffering of the black community? Well, it's clearly not, I mean, it is to a small degree, but it's clearly not racism clearly isn't the majority of the cause. It clearly is not. The numbers don't bear that out, and it doesn't bear out from a logical perspective either. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up to close it off here. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email, got linked in the description again. Appreciate any donations, with the very least. Just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last couple things, as always, check me out on Twitter if you haven't already, and check me out on BitChute. All the links are in the description, so you can find them all there.